Hello, welcome back to my channel everyone. In this video we'll be reading Soiled Doves, Prostitution in the Early West by Anne Seagraves. We are on chapter 6 today. We will be reading Molly Be Damned. And anyway, today I decided to wear a sweater instead of the blazer. Hope that's alright. Alright, so first let's look at this image. So this is Courtesy of Walt MQ's Murray Museum, Murray, Idaho. They have been in possession of this photo since the early 1950s and has searched extensively for others. After over 40 years of careful photo and clothing analyzation, the museum has officially announced that the image of Maggie Hall, aka Molly Be Damned. Here she is, looking lovely. Sorry, I don't know if the lighting is like helping or hindering, but there she is. Alright, chapter 6, Molly Be Damned. Every mining camp in Cowtown has its own legend of the beautiful prostitute with a heart of gold, and Molly Be Damned could easily have been the prototype for them all. Although it has been over a century since she last rode her high-spirited stallion through the doors of a Molly saloon and ordered, quote, drinks for the house, end quote. The lovely lady is as much alive today as she was in the past. Just ask any old-timer of North Idaho's Coral Islands. Molly Be Damned entered this world as Maggie Hall in Dublin, Ireland on December 26, 1853. Both her English Protestant father and Irish Catholic mother were well educated, and they provided a better than average home for this sparkling little girl. Maggie was carefully raised and received a fine education. She was a lively, outgoing child who made friends easily and often was considered to be nonconformist. Maggie grew into an exceptionally beautiful young woman. She was 5 feet 6 inches tall, with golden blonde hair, expressive blue eyes, and a contagious laugh. Her shapely figure was admired by women and desired by men. Although Maggie received many proposals of marriage, she always managed in her own charming way to discourage the eager young man. Her relentless spirit seemed to be constantly seeking new adventures. But in the 1970s, Ireland had little to offer a girl like Maggie Hall. At the age of 20, Maggie decided to journey to America, a land she felt would fulfill her dreams. Although her distant mother and father fought against the move, Maggie had made up her mind. She packed her clothing and few personal possessions and left both her doting parents and the shores of Ireland behind. The trip across the Atlantic was a joy to the young woman. Her anticipation and excitement of a new life were stronger than any fear she might have felt. As the New York skyline came into view, Maggie was overwhelmed by the large city. She knew that it was hers to conquer. The lovely Maggie Hall, however, was wrong. New York could be a cruel city. Although Maggie was well educated and spoke English with a bit of an Irish brogue, she could not find employment. As her money began to disappear, Maggie decided she would accept whatever was offered. She was soon working at a saloon as a barmaid. Maggie's shape, wit, and natural charm made her popular with the men, and her strong Catholic upbringing let them know she was no nonsense girl. By the end of her first year, Maggie had earned the respect and the love of the customers, barmaids, and saloon owner. Although she had learned to drink her whiskey straight, Maggie was never known to be a heavy drinker. She was happy and busy exploring the city of New York. All of that changed, however, on a cold winter evening when a well-dressed young man of obvious means entered the saloon. He was the handsomest man Maggie had ever seen, and like thousands of women before her, Maggie Hall immediately fell in love with the stranger. The man, who was named Burdan, B-U-R-D-A-N, Burdan, also appeared to be attracted to Maggie's obvious charm. On his third visit to the bar, he proposed marriage to the unsophisticated young woman. Maggie, who had thought that handsome stranger was the son of a wealthy family, and also a bit of a womanizer, let her heart speak for her and accepted his proposal. They were married that night, but it was not the kind of marriage Maggie had always dreamed of. Instead of a Catholic ceremony with a priest, she was married by a sleepy justice of peace. When Maggie became Mrs. Burdan, she also had to change her name to Molly because Maggie was too common. Then Mr. Burdan told her their marriage must be kept a secret. It seemed his income was a reminiscence of from his parents, and without their approval, he would be penniless. So Molly Burdan began a new life, married to a stranger without the blessing of her church. The couple moved into Burdan's expensive apartment, where Molly lived a life of luxury and ease, but only for a few months. When Burdan's father found his son had married a barmaid, he discontinued the allowance. Without an income, the Burdans were forced to move from apartment to apartment, avoiding paying rent. Molly's husband had never worked, nor did he intend to. She wanted to return to her old job in the saloon, but Mr. Burdan wouldn't allow it. He had other plans for Molly. Although Burdan was without funds, he continued to spend his time in saloons and gambling houses. His male friends constantly visited the Burdans, and all desired the beautiful Molly. One night, Molly's husband came to her with a desperate look upon his face and asked her to do what no self-respecting would ever do: sell her body to another man. Molly's life was shattered. She had never been with any man except Burdan, and she was a devout Catholic who knew the church would never forgive her. When Molly refused, Burdan put his head in her lap and begged her to save him, and Molly finally submitted to her husband's wishes, for she loved him. Over the next few weeks, Burdan brought many men home for Molly to entertain. She quietly did as she was told, but her heart was broken, and her love for honestly, let's call him Burdan began to disappear. Molly went to confession and was warned to discontinue following her husband's wishes. The next time she went to confess the same sins, she was not only denied forgiveness, she was also denied the sanctity of the church. Molly Burdan had been formally excommunicated, and she believed her soul was damned forever. From that day on, Molly obviously considered herself to be a sinner. Because as such, she continued her life. At the age of 24, Molly Burdan left her husband and traveled to the cities, mining camps, and cow towns of the West. She visited San Francisco for a brief period, then moved on to Oregon. Molly was seen in Chicago, Virginia City, Nevada, and the Dakota Territory. As she traveled, Molly became skilled at her new profession and a sought-after prostitute. The price for her favors was high, and she had acquired an expensive wardrobe, which included furs and exquisite jewelry. Although she had success and money, Molly's spirit was restless as ever. In 1884, when Molly was 30, she read a circular describing the rich gold strike in the Coureur d'Alliance. She immediately boarded a train heading to Idaho Territory. Calamity Jane was also traveling on the train for the same reason as Molly: a share of the gold. When the two ladies met, they decided Murray wasn't large enough for both of them, and Calamity returned to Deadwood, Dakota Territory. Molly left the train at Thompson Falls, Montana, where she purchased a strong horse and joined a pack train on its way to Murray, Idaho. They had to travel through deep snow over treacherous Thompson Pass. Quote, "Those who could not afford the price of a horse strapped their belongings on the backs or on a toboggan, dragging them behind them. The journey by pack train took a whole day, in the time when a whole day meant a whole day, end quote. As the train moved along at a slow, steady pace, a blizzard started, and soon everyone was struggling, especially those on foot. A mother carrying her small child was attempting to keep up with the rest of the group when she stumbled and fell. Molly got down off her horse and put both of them up on the saddle with her. She noticed that the woman and child were not dressed for a blizzard and were freezing. With a battered shelter appeared, Molly pulled away from the train, took off her own fur coat and wrapped them in it. She told the train to move on without her, and the three of them spent the long, cold night huddled together in the crude shelter. When the pack train arrived in Murray, word quickly spread of the beautiful woman who had stayed behind to help a mother and her child. No one expected to see any of them again. The next day, however, the town was surprised when Molly and her charges came galloping down the street. Molly handed the child down to someone helped the woman. People came from all directions to welcome the new arrivals, and Molly ordered a cabin and warm food for the woman and child. She requested the bill to be brought to her. As Molly took a deep breath and looked around, she saw the face of a rollicking young Irishman with a twinkle in his eyes. His name was Phil O'Rourke, I believe, a man who was to become her friend and confidant for the rest of her life. When O'Rourke asked Molly her name, she replied, "I am Molly Burdan," but he misunderstood her and responded in his heavy Irish brogue, "Well now, for the life o' me, I'd never thought it'd be..." Sorry, let me try that again. "Well now, for the life o' me, I never thought it... Molly be damn." "Well now, for the life o' me, I'd never thought it Molly be damn." And so the legend of Molly be damn began in a small town called Murray and spread throughout the West. As the local citizenry gathered around to admire the high-spirited lady who sat proudly upon her horse, Molly announced she wouldn't be needing a hotel. She wanted a cabin number 1. In Murray, as throughout the West, cabin number 1 was reserved for the Madame of the Red Light District. No one batted an eye or said a word. Phil O'Rourke gallantly helped Molly off her horse and carried her luggage to the cabin she requested. Molly knew she was welcome, and for the first time in her life, her restless spirit was at peace. Molly Bergen had finally found her home. Molly was happy in Murray. She was kind to her girls, and the locals were kind to her. She was constantly feeding hungry families, and everyone who was down on their luck knew that Molly be damn would provide warm clothes and shelter. Although she lived in luxury, Molly never hesitated to climb to a mountain cabin to nurse a sick prospector. She even began attending church services, but not in the Catholic Church. She would never return to her own faith. Shortly after Molly's arrival, a miner known as Lightnin came to town with his pouch full of gold. He had 2 things on his mind: whiskey and women. As he went from saloon to saloon, the rough miner got roaring drunk and headed for Molly's place to bed with one or more of her girls. The next day, when he awoken and reckoned his pouch of gold, he found it was missing. Lightning went into a rage and accused Molly of stealing his gold. Marley indignantly told Lightning that he had no control over her girls, although she knew they were not noted for their honesty. The man had visited many cabins, and she had no way of knowing who might have taken it. The detected miner knew in his heart that Molly was right. He bought a small outfit on credit and returned to his diggings. 3 months later, Lightning's partner came to town and let it be known that Lightning was dying. Molly was worried and upset. She gathered food, bedding, and medical supplies and set off for Lightning's cabin to nurse him back to health. When she arrived, he was semi-conscious and burning with fever. Molly spent several days caring for the man until he was better. The first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Molly B. Dam. When he asked her what she was doing, Molly threw him his pouch of gold. She had told her girls that Lightning was ill and needed his poke, and someone had placed it upon her dresser. Whoever had stolen the pouch couldn't keep it, knowing a man was dying. There was honor, even among prostitutes. Molly was a bit of a comme de l'homme. She was comfortable everywhere. She went and had a keen sense of humor. In her book, quote, The Legend of Molly B. Dam, and quote, Deborah Mellon wrote, quote, Molly also had a fun side to her, and she played this up as much as a modern-day Robin Williams shocks and astounds his audiences. She was a woman of first-class taste and demeanor. Everything about her spoke aces, end quote. One of the well-known stories about Molly concerned her unique way of taking a bath while getting rich. It was said, quote, she hit the jackpot from both sides of the curtain, end quote. Molly knew when the big cleanups from mines were due, she would have her own, quote, big cleanup bath, end quote. This popular, highly advertised event took place in Paradise Alley behind her establishment. Molly would come out of her cabin, blonde curls piled high, and draperies flowing, dragging a large tub which she filled with water. Her chatter was lively and full of ribald wit as she encouraged, quote, the boys to dig into their pockets and cover her tub with gold. As soon as the bottom of her tub was covered, off would come her clothes, and into the tub went the curviest Molly. While she sat on the gold, her glib remarks and risque chatter kept the party moving at a fast pace. Occasionally, a lucky miner was allowed to scrub the lady's back. That is, if the price was right. In 1886, a stranger arrived in Moray burning with a fever. He drove his horses up to the saloon, drank a pint of whiskey, and dropped dead. The stranger had the dreaded smallpox, and the whole town was at risk. There was no escape, and soon people began dying by the dozen. They tried to hide in their houses, hoping it would pass by them, but it never did. There was one inflectual doctor in town and no hospital, and everyone was terrified. After a few days, it was apparent that no one knew what to do, so Molly decided to call a town meeting. As the people gathered outside the courthouse, Molly began to lash out at them with a fury they had never seen. According to the witnesses, she said, quote, you don't like anything by running away from it or hiding your heads under your pillows. You hole up in your homes or rooms thinking maybe this won't find you while your friends and neighbors are dying off alone, unattended. Well, I'm not afraid. There are a dozen sick men up there in my part of town, and me and my girls are doing what we can for them. End quote. Molly's impassioned speech brought the town to life and gave them a direction in which to go. O'Rourke joined her, and together they helped clear out the hotels and fill them with the sick. Molly and her girls became nurses. The one doctor began to help, the others joined in. They administered to the ill in the makeshift hospitals, treating them with all known medications. It had been said that Molly B. Dam worked tirelessly. She was everywhere, nursing patients until she could no longer stand. She barely ate and didn't take time to even change her clothes. As weeks dragged on, there were less and less patients, and soon the daily procession to the cemetery ceased. The town had survived, but Molly was never to be the same. In October 1887, Molly became weary and listless and soon developed a constant fever and hacking cough. O'Rourke was the first person to notice her tiredness and loss of weight. But when he asked Molly to rest, she gave him her usual baldy answer and shook her head. O'Rourke, however, knew his friend was very sick, and in his concern asked some of the women to look in on Molly. They willingly began to visit her and soon realized she was seriously ill. By November, she became bedridden with a constant fever and cough that never stopped. The women of Moray kept a 24-hour vigil at Molly's bedside, and the doctor diagnosed her illness as consumption, a disease for which there was no cure. As Molly continued to worsen, Phil O'Rourke sat in quiet prayer by her side, and on January 17th, 1888, Molly B. Dam was gone. News of Molly's death spread throughout the mountains, and News of Molly's death spread throughout the mountains, and the Protestant ministers who had been visiting Molly daily asked the Catholic priest to give the woman absolution. When he refused, they made arrangements for her funeral. On that sad day, every blind was drawn on every window. The miners' sluice boxes and diggins remained silent, and all the saloons closed their doors. Thousands of people came from all over the surrounding areas to bid farewell to the lady who had brought gaiety and love to their community, and touched their hearts as no other ever had. The services were simple, and the Methodist minister's eulogy was spoken from his heart. Molly had known she was dying, and before the end came, she requested a simple wooden marker with the name Maggie Hall, which is also her mother's name, to be inscribed deeply in the wood. It was done as she wished. Today, stories of the prostitute with the heart of gold live on. In Murray's few remaining saloons, words from her song, The Legend of Molly B. Dam, fill the air, and every August there is a 2-day celebration in honor of Murray's most illustrious personality. The author would like to thank Deborah H. Milanish for her delightful book, The Legend of Molly B. Dam, and the use of her notes and brief quotes in the University of Idaho for their courtesy and cooperation in locating old records and newspaper articles about Murray Bergen. Okay, so now this is the eulogy for Molly B. Dam, right here. This usually was found clipped to Molly's death record in the Moray courthouse. Maggie Hall has gone from our midst, but she will never be forgotten, living forever in our hearts, a woman so strong, so forthright, that only her good deeds will be remembered. Generous to a fault with her world's goods, and with her bodily strength, she was one in whom no sacrifice was too great. She was a ministering angel to the sick and suffering, when exposure of illness laid men low. Neither snow nor heat kept her from an unfortunate's bedside. And these kind acts have been recorded in the book of books to her credit, overbalancing the debt side. She flashed like a diamond among us, until herself was laid low by a lingering illness, which brought her ultimately and in a humble cabin which was home to her. And to the credit of him in whom she placed her trust, her last days were made comfortable, if not happy, and every want was readily met. To the lasting credit of her Christian ladies, it must be said that they were not unmindful of the want of the sufferer in her long illness, and whatever could be done by them was done without ostentation. In the pure and noble spirit, God rest your soul, Maggie Hall, through eternally. Amen. Alright, so these are some images next. Hopefully they'll show up better than the previous image. Molly B. Dam's tombstone in Moray, Idaho. And then we have Moray, Idaho, 1890, a picture of the town. So here is her gravestone. Sorry. As you can tell, there's many flowers and presents laid around it. And here's a picture of the town, 1890. And I'll show the next picture when we read chapter 7, A Little Affection Please. Put the bookmark in. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this chapter's reading of chapter 6, Molly Be Damn. If you have any comments, please let me know in the comment section down below. If you have anything to add, what you thought of this chapter, Molly Be Damn, her life, her legacy, anything you'd like to share, how this reading affected you, what do you think of it, please let me know. But yeah, if you could like, comment, subscribe, hit the little bell notification, that would be very helpful. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye!